I'm Amy Baxter, editor of Retail Leader, and welcome to Trend Talk. Every week on Trend Talk, we identify a retail trend across the industry and give it a deep dive with an insider. This week, we're covering some of the latest shopper behavior trends at malls. In particular, we're looking at foot traffic patterns over the last few months and observing the rebound of in-store shopping coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic. With me today is Ethan Chernofsky, Vice President of Marketing with Placer.ai, which is a data analytics company that publishes regular data on the retail industry. I'm super excited to have Ethan here, so welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. I'm wondering if you could introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about Placer.ai.
Sure. So Placer is a location analytics and foot traffic data company. And what that means in short is, we say people vote with their feet. So we're showing you how people are voting every single day across the United States. Very critically, it's all anonymized aggregate data. So we are GDPR and CCPA compliant, but we are being used every day by retailers, commercial real estate companies, and beyond to really understand what's happening in the offline retail environment.
Awesome. Well, let's get into it. So your most recent mall index shows a big return of shoppers for May 2021. Foot traffic to malls has been improving all year, but it's still not back up to those 2019 levels. So could you briefly tell us what the index measures and what the latest figures from May reveal?
Sure. So with the mall index, we're looking at top tier malls across the country. And so even when you see the, we're not fully back yet data, a lot of that is because we have several key states that haven't fully reopened yet. So California and New York, certainly on the way, but they're not fully back the same way that Florida or Texas or other states are. But overall, when we look at these numbers, we see a really promising recovery that's showing a few really important things. So firstly, it's showing the resiliency of consumer demand and that people really do enjoy the shopping experience and that when they're given the opportunity to come back, they're going to do so. And it's also showing us that the retail environment in the offline world is still really strong, even in spite of the tremendous disruption that was caused by the pandemic. And it's something that is going to be really important to keep an eye on as we come into the end of this year.
Yeah, can you describe what the patterns of foot traffic tell us about the larger retail industry?
So I think it shows a few really important takeaways. So the first is, when people have the opportunity to go out and shop, they do so. So we see the biggest trigger of surges in foot traffic for retailers across the country simply being those retailers being open in an environment where people can come and shop. So if there's crazy weather, that's going to impact shopping, but that would have impacted shopping in any other year in the past as well. I think the other thing that we're seeing is just how significant some of the accelerations have been. So elements that were doing strong pre-pandemic, they're still strong now, but brands and sectors that had struggled pre have seen some of that struggle actually increase. And one of the elements that really is important to keep an eye on is the evolution of some of these key retail sectors moving forward and which brands are going to be able to fill the voids that are created.
Yeah. What are some of the struggles that you've seen that have been accelerated?
Sure. So you think about brands like department stores. So that classic department store that would sit in many malls, it was likely a little too many of them. And so that right sizing effort, which is something that's going to be really important for those brands moving forward and for their ability to pivot and evolve, is something that's going to create a lot of opportunities. So there are up and coming department brands like Neighborhood Goods, or there are many brands that are looking to move away from wholesale contracts and into an owned retail presence. So think of Nike, Lululemon, Under Armour, Adidas, and so many more who are really looking to own that offline retail presence. And that's something that could have really significant ramifications across the wider sector.
Yeah, very cool. So the last couple of months have, again, people are going back into stores. They're feeling a lot more confident after the national vaccine program rolling out here in the US. And they're just eager to get back out there to see brick and mortar. It was kind of the same story, March, April, big boom. And now May again, big boom. So what do you think is driving shoppers back? If it wasn't the first 2 months, what's driving them in May? Is there still this pent up demand? I keep hearing the term revenge shopper. And what are people buying?
I mean, the revenge shopping is quite the term. I think pent-up demand drove a lot of interest in March, and it will likely continue to have kind of waves of value in certain areas around the country and for certain market segments. But I think we tend to forget about just normal seasonality. So what we can expect heading into the summer is July and August are usually a really significant shopping period because of that back to school season. Then we'll likely see a lull in September and October like we would in a regular year before seeing that holiday season drive those visits again. So this combination of pent-up demand early, but then the return of normal seasonal trends is something that we expect to have a really significant impact on the retail space in the coming months.
Okay, great. And then I think with the shoppers coming back, there's this question that remains if the retailers have been ready to bring foot traffic back. There's a number of new challenges. I think you mentioned some of them, that the issues that were there are only accelerated now. But right now there's talks of labor shortage, supply chain crunches, and just the enhanced safety and cleaning measures that brick and mortar stores have to go through now with COVID. So how have retailers been able to respond to all these challenges, and what do you see that's changed that will stick around for the long term?
So again, I don't think we've seen any massive shift in how retail operates. One of the really interesting things we heard a lot throughout the pandemic was that shopping behaviors have shifted, which they did, and they were going to change forever, which they haven't. In fact, when we look at shopping behaviors in the last few months, they look far more like what we saw pre-pandemic than what we saw during the pandemic. And what we're likely to see is, again, this return to normalcy as our normal routines come back, as our normal professional commutes to school. That's going to drive this return to normalcy in retail. And it's something that we expect to continue. I think that there are obviously going to be struggles with elements like supply chain, but that could be a benefit for retailers as well. We've seen kind of pricing perspectives change. So as opposed to this race to the bottom for deals, brands willing to keep their prices a little bit higher, which has helped them drive better profits. So I think there have been a lot of lessons in the retail environment over the last year that have actually prepared them to potentially do even better in the coming years.
Yeah, interesting. Cool. Well, so I like to end on this question. We sort of touched on it there, but what are your predictions for the future? Will we, if it's the normal patterns we're going to see, how soon until we're back to 2019 levels in terms of foot traffic? Anything that's on your long-term, short-term vision?
Sure. So I think there's two that are really important. The first is, and we were seeing this pre-pandemic as well, but I think it's only been accelerated by the pandemic, and that's the rise of owned retail by product, direct-to-consumer, formerly digitally native companies. And the reason it's so significant is because it creates a much bigger long tail in retail. So if we think in the past, there were lots of brands that had 500 plus locations, we're going to see less and less of that over time as these brands look to right size, but there'll be a larger number of brands that have 50 to 200 locations, which creates a more diverse retail mix, which is ultimately creating a better retail environment because it means that not every retail location is the same. So as a consumer, you have a better situation where there's more diversity. It's better for the retailers and it's better for the landlords too. And the second retail trend that we think is really important is this understanding of a wider push towards diversification. So we look at things like, the Gap leaving malls to check out what an outdoor situation might mean for them, or Sephora coming into Kohl's and looking into out of mall locations. And we often view it as, oh no, malls are in trouble or the urban environment is in trouble, but I don't think that's the case. In fact, we think it's much more effective to look at this through that diversification lens. So brands trying to see how they can reach more different environments and tweak their offering to provide the best of what they can offer in each situation. And that, again, creates a smarter, more diverse brand that puts less of their eggs in any one basket and allows them to weather lots of different storms more effectively.
Interesting. Great perspective. Ethan, well, thank you so much for being here. That's actually going to do it for us this week on Trend Talk, and we'll be back here with another trend next week. Thanks.